A story just broke, and it's all over the internet, television, talk radio, and papers. It's been revealed that the CEO of the vendor that supplies your #1 brand has been indicted on major fraud charges, and now your company's name is being bantered about in the media. You're getting phone calls from worried business associates, angry customers, and the media. What's your game plan? Do you shoot from the hip? Do you go dark and turn off the phones? Is there really anything you can do when your worst nightmare is unfolding right in front of your very eyes? Hi, everyone, and welcome to the final edition of Copy Confidential. This is your host, Kim Phelan, and today we have a very special and important writing and planning subject that's never been wrestled with in our interviews before, and that topic is crisis communication. My guest expert is Melanie Rembrandt, who is the founder and CEO of Rembrandt Communications. Welcome, Melanie. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks so much, Kim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, before we dive into this great topic, let me just mention a few things for everyone about you, Melanie, by way of introduction. Melanie's specialty is helping businesses boost their sales as well as awareness and credibility using SEO, content marketing strategy, and public relations. She has very illustrious credentials, which are included in your printed packet this month. But significantly, and I really liked this, she was voted one of the top Google SEO copywriters on earth. That's very important. You can find out more about Melanie and her services at www.rembrandtwrites.com. Melanie, I'm so honored that you graciously accepted my invitation for this interview.
Well, it's exciting to be here. I've heard many of your interviews, and I'm happy to be part of one of them.
It's awesome, and I do know it's quite early on this Wednesday morning for you. It's only 7 o'clock Pacific time, so thank you again so kindly for jumping right into your day with us first thing in the morning. As I mentioned for everyone, all of the various types, or I should say all the various types of copywriting and campaigns that we've discussed here on these interviews, we've never addressed the strategy of preparing content for a business PR crisis. Now, you've provided me with an article that you wrote featuring 5 important tips, and so with your permission, we will print and pass this along for our members in this month's packet, if that's okay with you.
Oh, that's fine.
All right. So without further ado, let's start digging away at this thing. And I think a good place to begin is for you to maybe scare us a little bit, not too much, but a little, by just to give us a little jolt, a reality jolt. Talk about what can happen if a small business owner is not prepared for a public relations kind of crisis.
Well, I think a lot of small business owners look at the big corporations out there and all the big crises that they have, and they don't think it involves them. But today, with the Internet, all it takes is one disgruntled employee or customer who posts one simple little tweet, and that can just expand out of control. And the other thing is there might be news from your competitors who are having issues. There might be industry events or even celebrities that use products and services like yours that have an issue. And the media will be reaching out to companies like yours if you're at all involved with those products and services. So dealing with a crisis is more likely than you think it might be for a small business owner.
Yeah, I agree with that. And what's so interesting, and I'll mention this again a little bit later, but with the interconnectedness of our world and things just spreading like wildfire, sometimes true, sometimes false. You know, we hear a lot about fake news. You know, there's just any number of things that can go awry that have absolutely nothing to do with you or how you conduct business or how you conduct your personal life. It's just the world that we live in. The consequences of others and the products and services of others could suddenly, by no doing of your own, could thrust you into the middle of sort of this media attention that you didn't ask for.
Exactly. And you don't need to be worried about it, though, as long as you prepare in advance. And so, you might be wondering.
Yeah. So I got to stop you right there, because when you say prepare in advance, I mean, it would be impossible to prepare for anything specific because you don't know what it is that could happen. But so I want you to kind of break down what sort of things you're advising us about.
Exactly. Well, there are things that you can add at the last minute, but there are things that you can do to prepare in advance. First of all, I mean, most business owners already do this. Know your business. Know your policies backwards and forwards before you even talk to any media, because they're going to want to know the inside of your business and how it works. And you need to know that, otherwise you're going to look really bad talking about your business. You also need to be aware of what's going on in the industry. Sometimes you can see bad situations forming in advance and, know what's going on so you're not surprised by that. The other thing, if you have products and services that just don't work, fix them now, because if a crisis develops, the media is going to pick into that and find every little thing wrong with your business. Now, if you do have services or products that you have issues that you cannot fix, you want to create the appropriate documentation. That might include guarantees, instructions, warnings, any kind of content you need to fulfill your obligations to the customers. And you want to have those in place right away so there aren't any little loopholes that might be found about your business. So, secure down all the paperwork, all the products and services that you offer, your policies, that includes employee policies, customer service policies, etc. And then once you've got that down, it's your business basics, you want to put together, a crisis communications plan. And first of all, you're going to start with a communications team. You've got to pick one person who's going to be your spokesperson, because you want everyone you don't want employees just picking up the phone and starting to talk to media members. That's a big no-no, because you don't know what they're going to say. So you want to, make sure you have one key spokesperson who's going to talk to the media, and employees know to refer media members and anyone calls to that particular spokesperson. And that spokesperson needs to be trained in advance. If they're not familiar talking to the media, being on camera, they really need to get some training in advance and just go over things, how are you going to say things? What are you going to say? And maybe have, answers ready about your business, about your founders, about your products and services. And that's usually pretty easy because you know your products and services, as I mentioned earlier, and you know all of your policies backwards and forwards. Now, as far as putting together paperwork on this, you want to have, information to the media members. You want to have truthful facts that you're going to talk about your business, and you want to keep it positive at all times. So, you start with those basics.
Right. Melanie, I want to insert another question, if you don't mind. And you and I, before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about the importance of scripting ourselves so that we don't ramble or go off topic or say things that, maybe weren't germane or maybe that we might regret having said. You don't want to do pull when there's a microphone in front of you. So, I'm just wondering if you could just back up again where we're talking to the media. Again, it's hard to put too much together in advance if you don't know, what the situation is going to be. But, are you suggesting that maybe even you put together a script of some kind once this thing has sort of, blasted out?
Well, that's just the thing. People can tell when you're reading from a script. So I think the key is to know your policies and products backwards and forwards and practice in front of a camera. Have someone ask you questions that might deal with, think about the worst case scenario that can possibly happen with your company. That way that spokesperson is ready to go. Now, as far as the script goes, there's a few things you need to keep in mind. You never want to say no comment. You want to say something like, I don't have that answer for you right now. I will get that to you as soon as possible. You definitely want to listen to the reporter. You want to avoid any jargon. And also, you don't want to say things like, oh, this is off the record. Today, nothing is off the record. So it can be a very serious situation, and it's just really important to plan ahead. Think about talking points that you can say naturally, positive aspects about your company, kind of green, quote unquote, green terms that you can use no matter what kind of crisis situation comes up. And so you'd want to put down some positive talking points about your business. You really don't want to say anything negative about the competition, other media venues, etc. You want to keep it positive because you're thinking about your reputation as a business. And if you're not prepared with these kind of statements in advance and you practice saying them, you will be more than likely to say the wrong thing, and that might even make the crisis escalate. So as far as writing down a script or anything, I'm talking about, talking points about your business. What are the positive things that you can say about your business? So those are things that you can get ready in advance.
Right. Okay. All right. And so then I did interrupt you. You were kind of moving along onto the type of content that you need to, have ready in advance. And so tell me more about, those specifics of content that we can prepare.
Okay, well, in addition to the talking points and having the spokesperson ready to go, and you also probably want a backup spokesperson. I didn't mention that in case that person is not around, because that can be an issue too if the main spokesperson is not around and a crisis happens. But as far as the content goes, have those talking points together. And then you also want to create something called a dark website page. And this is a page on your website that is ready to go live immediately with all the right messages, images, etc. And it's a very simple page. It's very clean and easy to read and understand. And what you can do in advance with this is include facts about your company, the history of your company, information about your products and services, and photos and videos. And then once the crisis happens, you want to meet with your team and discuss it. Then you're going to post all the pertinent facts. The key when a crisis happens is to be truthful and honest and to stay positive. So you'd want something like, here's what the crisis is. These are the instructions for customers or people to take if they need to. The steps that your company is taking and a potential timeline of when those steps are happening. You want any kind of background information about the situation and what's going on. And then contact information, how can people reach you and get more data? And then also, where can they get updates? You want to be able to update this page easily with current information and let people know when you're going to update it so that they have a place to go. And by providing this content, you're kind of guiding the situation. You're getting the content out there that you want to get out there. You're answering people's questions. You're avoiding more problems happening. And the media know exactly what kind of statements you have. They can use the photos and images you've provided. So it's kind of the best way to try to control the situation.
So, you've been talking about, some of the specifics here. What do you want the outcome to be, and how do you reach that outcome, basically, if you could kind of summarize that for me?
Well, exactly, and that should be one of the first questions you ask when a crisis happens. First assess what's going on and say, okay, what do we want the outcome to be of this crisis, and then kind of work backwards and think, okay, what do we need to do? We put out our website, we've talked to the media. Now you might need to create additional content to, address the situation that's going on. And that might be a personal letter from the CEO to customers. Again, being very honest and open and truthful. And you might just send out an email. You also have to remember all your social media, and whether you're going to put a blog or an article out there about it. Maybe it's all of a sudden it's a quick video from your CEO or your top spokesperson, or it's specific photos. You kind of work backwards, and you use what medium am I going to use to get what market to get to what market at what time? So you think about what you're going to use content-wise to get out your message the best way possible. And usually with a crisis, people want to hear from the CEO, and they want an honest answer, and they want to know that you care. I mean, empathy is huge, and you can't really get that through some kind of technological email that goes out, or, if it's coming right from the mouth of the CEO, that means a lot, and that can really help in a situation like, a crisis situation.
Right. I really appreciate you saying that about empathy, because, we need to know about tone of voice, and I'm going to probe into that a little bit more in a few minutes. But, when you said social media, my ears kind of pricked up, because we all know that our employees have lives outside of our four walls of the business, and they're all on Facebook. They're all on Instagram and Snapchat and this and that. And it could be, potentially exacerbating, again, to the situation if you have employees who are, posting their own thoughts and perhaps confidential or proprietary information. So what's your message for us about really controlling the crisis message, and how to sort of rein in and direct the employee side of communication, both while they're at work and off work? Is there anything that we can do to really control that?
Well, I think it's something we all worry about. I mean, we've seen it in the news where one employer makes one little tweet and the whole company is in jeopardy. And this all goes back to the preparation for a crisis and your crisis communications plan. I mean, you want to sit down with employees and I'm sure you have a social media policy. If not, I would definitely form one saying, what can you write about? What you should not write about. If you get caught writing about this, you're going to be warned. Let employees know in advance what they can and cannot do. I mean, I have a client right now who just approached me and said, I just realized my employee is posting all of the things about our website, and don't we own that content? And I said, yes, you do. She needs to stop right away, because that has to do with your brand image. So you have to inform employees way in advance and remind them of the policies. You can't all of a sudden have a crisis and then, oh, great, what are my employees going to do? That's why it'll give you, ease of mind if you have your communications crisis plan in advance and employees know exactly what they can and cannot do. And the first thing they should know is if a crisis happens, all the information goes to this main key person, whether it's the spokesperson or it's that one person I talked about before. Just like they can pick up the phone and talk to a media member, they could talk to one via social too, and you don't want that to happen. So that's why the preparation is really important. It can ease the stress later on when one of these crisis situations happens.
Right. I'm so glad that the subject of a social media policy came up, that it is really important, not just for the sake of crisis management and crisis messaging and communications and content. But just for the sheer reputation, ongoing reputation of your company, you would know this better than I, Melanie. Is it a best practice, or is it recommended to have your employees sign your social media policy as acknowledging that they have read it and that they agree to comply with it?
I am very much about having signed documents. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but it brings attention to the fact that, hey, this is official. This is what we expect of you. And it's in the back of their heads that, hey, I signed this legal document. Whether or not they, move forward and agree to use it, that's fine. But at least you have it in writing, because if something does happen in the future and you have to go to court or what have you, at least you have something in writing. And, whether or not you have a very casual work environment, it just sets the tone of, hey, we're an official company. If something happens, we have this paperwork, you've signed it, we believe in what you're doing as an employee here, but these are the rules that we ask you to follow. So I think it just sets a good precedent up front when you hire someone to have them sign that document. Right.
I think that's great. And it can just be an addendum or a portion of your employee handbook if you're that sophisticated, if you have that many people on staff, you probably can just have it be a part of that. But moving along, and I think, I'm sure folks are already picking up on the importance of being in control of, first of all, of what you can control. And you can,
right.
can be proactive about controlling your own messages because if you don't, chances are somebody else will speak for you, will say things about you. So the emphasis on being proactive is kind of important here. And another area that I think you were going to lead us into was the whole subject of press releases. And even though we've discussed press releases in general as a subject in Copy Confidential interviews before, this is a very specific type of document or press release for the media. Tell me, give us some guidelines here about press releases during a crisis.
Sure. Well, this is probably one of the first documents you're going to want to put on your dark website when it goes live, because media members know to go to the press release to get all of their facts and information about a crisis. So you want this to be very official. Some press releases today are very casual to get media attention and to tell a story. The whole point of your press release is to clear your brand image and your reputation, let reporters know exactly what's going on, what you're doing about it, who they contact, and, just updates on the information. So with that in mind, you want your headline to describe the situation, be very truthful and upfront, and then you have your subhead, and you want to include any search engine optimization keywords in there in case a media member is looking for information online about that crisis situation. Your press release will be more likely to pop up in the search results. But, that's kind of a side issue, but just something to keep in the back of your head. And then the first paragraph, just to break it down, the first paragraph you'd want, all the information bluntly, what's going on, how it's affecting your business and your customers, what you're doing about it, and when. In the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, what does the media need to know? What are we going to tell them that will give us a positive brand recognition and keep our reputation intact? And then obviously you do the body copy of all the data going on. You want quotes from your CEO and the officials at your company. Also, any outside experts who can add to the credibility of your story, that's key. And then you want to end it with, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how you can contact us. So, you want to keep it very simple. You just think about, well, what do we want the media and people to know? What's going to give them the information they need and put us in a positive light? And that's how you write your crisis press release, and then you get it online as quickly as possible.
Okay, good. And I can understand or appreciate that this question, probably depends a lot on the exact nature of what the crisis or situation is. But do you recommend, you've talked about being upfront and truthful. Does that mean coming right out and identifying, and addressing that 800-pound gorilla in the room? Just come right out and say, in regards to, XYZ situation, or should you more just stick to the talking points about your company and what you're doing? Again, knowing that the nature of the crisis might dictate that, is it a good idea to just come right out and talk about the problem, whatever it is?
That's a really good question, Kim. This is when it helps to have some kind of PR professional on your team, because you really have to feel out the situation and see where it's going. For example, I had a client who was involved in the caramel apple business, and there was this huge to-do because one of his competitors had bad apples people were getting sick on. And there was all this buzz about it, and I was aware of it. I was watching the media. Fortunately, my client's company was never mentioned. If they're never mentioned, why am I going to bring up news and bring them into the spotlight? I mean, we were ready to go. We had all our information, but you monitor it carefully. And you have to think, well, if I come out and say this information, is it going to help or hurt me? Well, I monitored the information for a long time, and fortunately, my client's company did not come up, and his apples were perfectly fine. They had nothing to do with this scare at all. But, the media story was going crazy, and they're saying, oh, don't buy caramel apples. They're awful. They're going to hurt people. So it was a very touchy situation, and you really have to be aware of what's going on, whether to release your content or not. And we'll talk about this a little later, some of the samples. What we did was, after it kind of blew over, we came out with media about how safe my clients' apples were, how good they were, the quality. We just emphasized what they go through for the quality. So that's how you have to think about it. It's very touchy with the media. You just have to be ready to go for any situation and kind of think in advance of what might happen. Sometimes you just want to be quiet, and other times you want to get your word out there right away. Okay,
good advice. You have told us, to be direct, to be upfront, and so on. Approximately how long should this press release be? And should there be more than one press release?
Well, you want to keep it simple. I know a lot of people like the 2-page press release. I'm all about 1-page press releases, and really the key of a press release is to get the facts out that the media can write their story from. I mean, if they want more information, they'll call you, and then you can give specifics over the phone. And you want to include all the information you need to include, but I would keep it to 1 page unless there's some, outside circumstances that it needs to be longer. A lot of people think, oh, you write a press release and the media is going to call you and you're going to be on the cover of Time, and it just doesn't work that way. It's about the personal pitching behind the press release. I look at a press release as the information that you have approved to go out. Let's say you're a copywriter writing a press release, and you get approval from your client in writing that it's okay to distribute. You have that in writing that data is okay to distribute and get out there. If you don't have a press release, you can't prove that your client said it was okay to say that information. So it's kind of a little backup guarantee for anyone writing the content, and also the message you're getting out there. You know that data has been approved. So I just keep it simple, tell the facts, and provide credibility.
Our folks, our listeners, will have this from a previous interview, but if you could just briefly, give a few pointers on how to distribute your press release. What are some best practices? Should you target specific publications? Should you, use a PR service? What are some tips for people who are just, really don't know this world, this this industry, what do you do with your release once, and you want to get it out to the right people?
Well, like I said before, if you want specific media interviews, you're not necessarily going to get them with a press release unless you're a well-known company or you have a really interesting story. What happens is, like I said, you write the press release to get all the facts in place, and then a media person would reach out to specific targeted media members with a specific unique story for that media member based on the press release. Now, if you just want to get news out, there's if you're small, there's several different options. If you're a small business, you can go to free sites that distribute your press release for free. That way it's online and people can see it. Not a lot's going to happen, but at least you can be quote unquote first to market getting your news out there.
Right.
Then obviously there are all the distribution services like PR Web, PR Newswire. If you really want your news out there, you spend the money on a PR Newswire distribution. They are extremely credible, and it will get the word out everywhere. PR Web does a great job. It's a little less expensive, and it does get the word out there, especially if your press release is optimized for the search engines. I mean, most of my clients end up at the top of Google News, Bing News, et cetera, the day their press release comes out because it's optimized accordingly. The key with a press release is it's just distributing news. Now, if you also want to send it obviously to your network, whether that's email, social media, obviously post it on your website. It comes down to, though, if you really want media attention, you've got to take the extra step of doing one-on-one pitching. Unless you're well known, do not spend the money on a big press release because no one's going to care. It takes a media person or a PR person picking up the phone and actually calling and talking to a media member to sell the story. And once in a while, clients will have this awesome story out there about, something really interesting, and they will get calls, and that does happen. But just to set expectations, when you do a press release, the point is to get the facts out there. And if you really want media coverage, you've got to do the one-on-one targeted pitching.
Okay, this was really good about releases. You've given us a lot of pointers, and so I don't want to be redundant, but is there any other guidance that you can give us about how to react once the crisis news has sort of hit the fan and your phone is ringing? What is your approach, and what are some specific things? Maybe anything else that you haven't already touched on?
Okay, well, I can kind of put it into a nutshell, the process I would take. Okay, so you have this crisis happening. Your dark website goes live with your press release on it. One of the first things I would do is have the CEO do a video interview in his own words, getting the word out there. Also sending either a personal letter to customers, potential customers, affiliates, etc., via snail mail, because they would really appreciate getting that note, in the mail. I mean, you can also email it. And it depends on the level of the crisis, too. I mean, if you're really trying to save the reputation of your company, you've got to have that personal touch from the top level executive, because people see that and they think, okay, they're actually doing something about it. Because how often today do you deal with a company and you just feel like you're talking to some recorded message, no one cares? If you get a personal message from the executive, that's going to matter. That's going to help your online reputation, and it's also going to build word of mouth. So, it takes a lot of work and extra effort and money, but when it comes right down to it, it's your business reputation at stake. And you might even have competitors speaking badly about your business. So, in addition to all the things we talked about, I think, something directly from the CEO, top level executive is really important. And, he or she wants to describe the facts, include contact information, say, hey, we're working on this. We're so sorry. Be very honest and truthful. I mean, your customers want to hear that. And I think that's very important to remember. And, if you, need to spend the money on it, it's highly important, because, one crisis like this can ruin your business. I mean, you could be spending tons of money on lawsuits, lose, not be able to sell any of your products. So, I mean, it's very important. So I think that top level message should go out at all times whenever there's a crisis.
Right. I think it bears mentioning, our members, our listeners are certainly astute people. In sales copy, we teach, keep your finger on the pain, and you're using a whole different type of language, to sell. But in this type of messaging, it's very different. Well, of course, you're sincere and genuine in sales copy too, but you just have to really have a tone of voice that is pretty much like how you would talk to a friend or a family member. I mean, I think, do you agree with that? I mean, your tone, you had mentioned the word empathy previously. I think your tone, it can't be, corporate BS. It really just has to be genuine and plain language and telling as much as you are able to tell, right?
Exactly. And one good example might be, the intro you see when you're on an airplane and the CEO comes on and invites you to the flight. Something like that. It's very professional, but it's also casual. I guess it depends on what airline you're flying to, but
right.
Yeah, as long as you're honest. I mean, no one likes a quote-unquote sleazy salesperson, and, they want to know who they're dealing with. So you want that personal aspect, and you do get that by the tone of talking to a friend, or someone you care about. So that's really important when it comes to this because, if you're in a crisis situation, people who are contacting you are stressed out, or media members are trying to meet a deadline. If you're calm and you give that, a friendly and open type of feeling, it's really going to help the situation. Right.
Hey, Melanie, one thing that we've kind of danced around a little bit is, the timing. We talked about, being proactive. What's the importance of, the timing and the speed with which you respond? Is there harm that can be done if you delay it all?
Yes. The media world is all about speed. You want to be the first one to get your message in. On the other hand, too, like I mentioned, you've got to feel out the situation to see when is the appropriate time to speak and get your information out there. Usually it's right away. Because like you said previously, if you don't get your message out there, somebody else will talk for you. And so that's why you've got to be prepared and ready, because we've all seen in the news where people wait to get their message out there, and all these theories start forming about why didn't they respond, and then the crisis just gets out of control. So you want to monitor it, but more than likely you want to get your information out there as soon as possible.
And, the gossip factor is huge.
Exactly.
Right. So you want to cut that off before it begins. And again, you may have mentioned this before, but if a reporter asks you something that you don't know, or you're not quite sure what to say, I mean, what should your response be in that situation?
Like I said, you don't want to say no comment. You just say, I'm sorry, I do not have that answer right now. I will get back to you as soon as possible. And then make sure you get back to them as soon as possible, because if you don't, that can catapult into another issue. Another key thing is that your spokesperson or their assistant should write down all the media members who contact them during a crisis, because then you want to follow up with them accordingly. Hey, did you get all the information you need? Here's photos. Here's our latest update. It's just a way of controlling the situation. And as you can see, you really need to be prepared, because you see a lot of people get in front of a camera and they'll be like, I don't know the answer, or, I'll get back to you, or no comment. It just looks bad. And today, that news just travels fast. I mean, everyone will see the video within 5 minutes, so, so you can really avoid a lot of business damage just by being prepared, having your content ready, and knowing what to say and not to say.
I'm going to move us into examples again, and you shared a good one with the caramel apple client. But before I move us on to the next one, I'm gonna stop because I'm wondering if maybe someone is listening to our conversation and they're getting ready to turn it off because they're thinking, I'm just a small business. I have a little shop on Main Street, or I have a little online business doing, selling XYZ. I'm a service provider. I'm a dentist. What the heck do I need this for? This is so irrelevant to me as a small business owner operator. What do you say to that, Melanie?
Well, I say most of the businesses I've had crisis issues with are small businesses. Sometimes it's the competition. I mean, if you're in business, you have competition, and they might do something to ruin your business. You are not, immune to this just because you're a small business. And when it happens, it's too late. So it's definitely something to be aware of. Maybe you just, think about, hey, what would I do if the media calls? Maybe you don't go to extensive crisis communications planning, but at least have it in the back of your mind of, okay, here's what I don't say, here's what I do say. Just be prepared, because if they call you, also if you're a small business and the media calls, that could be great publicity for you if you do it the right way. It's, third-party credibility you simply can't buy. So
right.
It can definitely work in your favor. And, you don't want to be caught off guard, because it can definitely ruin your business. I've seen it happen. So it's something to keep in the back of your head, especially, I know people in the medical profession, dentists, physical therapists, what have you, have, insurance in that, but still it can turn into a communication nightmare. So, right. I'm just kind of putting a warning out there. No matter how big your business is, it's something you need to think about at the least.
No matter where I am when I'm driving, I get in the car. My daughter observed this recently. My daughter's a teenager, and she saw that, I started the car, and the first thing I did, even before I put my seatbelt on, is that I locked the doors. And she says, why do you always do that? Like, she's so annoyed with me. Why do you do that? I said this. I said, because I don't like surprises. I don't like surprises. And the very worst kind of surprise I can imagine is somebody opening one of the doors in my vehicle without me inviting them to do so. So I said that just as an analogy for what we're talking about, because, preparing your communication and your content and having this conversation with yourself and your team, it's locking your doors so that you won't be unpleasantly surprised. Yes, okay, you'll be unpleasantly surprised if a situation happens. Do you want it to happen? No, of course not. But you're sort of mitigating the damage by preparing yourself. Does that make sense?
I love that analogy. That's true. And it's something people don't want to think about. I mean, if you're a small business owner, you've got a million things going on at once. The last thing you want to do is think about, the crisis, that's not going to happen. But really, if you just take maybe 30 minutes and jot down, here's what I'm going to do if this happens, what is the worst case scenario that can possibly happen, at least you'll have that preparation and you can pull out that little sheet if, the media call you.
Right. I derailed us for a minute there, but I want to get back on track and see if there's maybe another example that you could share with us. And by the way, with your real incident, are we going to be allowed to print these, or would you can I make them available online or something? Can we share examples of your press releases that you're talking about?
Yes, they were distributed publicly, so you can find them online. So they are completely available.
Perfect. Okay, wonderful. So give me another example of a situation that you've been involved with where you sort of helped in a PR crisis situation.
Well, this sample is a little less harsh than the Apple situation. Basically, customers for a long time for this toll bridge were, happy with the current rates. And obviously the owners had to raise the rates to deal, with current prices in the industry, et cetera. And customers were calling in right and left. We're not happy. Why are you doing this? So I suggested that, one of the executives write a personal letter telling people, hey, this is why we're raising the rates. We appreciate your business, et cetera. And so we sent out this letter, and it calmed it down right away. Again, it was that personal touch. I think people are so used to dealing with impersonal robot type situations, it's refreshing to actually hear about somebody who cares. So, that's another example where it's a personal letter from an executive going out via physical mail, not via email. And that's kind of like sales writing. It's the same thing, except you're addressing a certain situation and providing answers to people, and they value that. They value that you care.
Right. Well, we've had other guest experts tell us in these interviews on the sales side, as you say, that one of the main things people want is a reason. They want a reason why. Why? If you're making an offer, they want to know, well, why? Why do I have to do this by such and such date? Or, just tell the truth and give them a reason. I like that. That's really good advice.
I think you can use that advice in any type of writing, really. It comes down to human emotions.
Right. Melanie, 10 years ago, I was thinking about this. A decade or so ago, I really thought that ours was a truly litigious society, but who could have foreseen the layer of today with so many personal conduct accusations and scandals popping up almost every week. It's almost a little frightening to think about the possibilities of what could happen to our business and to our lives. Things like we've talked about that are, might even be completely outside of our control, that had nothing to do with our behavior or our responsibility. And so on the one hand, we don't want to live in fear or start being afraid to make good decisions or take business risks. I'm just wondering if you could maybe give us a message of hopefulness that would reassure us and help us to be confident no matter what might come around the corner.
Well, of course, and it can be very scary out there, but if you just focus on, if you set up your business with integrity, and then you prepare for both good and bad situations, you're going to be able to establish a positive reputation with all the people you deal with, whether it's associates, employees, even friends and family. And then you're going to have a better chance of coming out on top no matter what happens. So it's key just to be, have an ethically sound business and be truthful and prepare for all kinds of situations, and you'll be in a much better situation in case a crisis evolves. Right.
And as we bring this conversation to a close, do you have some final advice, or would you like to kind of boil down, what it is that we should do first and what our priorities should be with planning content right away?
Sure. Well, we talked about a lot, but it comes down to just knowing your business policies, create an action plan in case for the worst case scenario, what could happen. Then you want to share it with your employees so they know what to do when a crisis happens. And that way you're going to avoid confusion. People will know what to do and what to say when a crisis occurs. And then at least you won't be escalating any more problems from lack of organization. So at least have some kind of policy in place so people know what to do if there is a crisis and what they need to say and who they need to turn to. Mm-hmm. And then I also think it's a good idea to practice media interviews and how you speak to the press, because your presentation will go a long way in building a positive reputation for your business And also, if you say the wrong things, that could be a problem as well. So I'd say that's important too.
Oh, I really like that. Kind of doing a little role play or something to rehearse and kind of know what your posture is going to be, and maybe get a little coaching even about that. I think that's great advice. Melanie, I'm almost overwhelmed by the valuable information that you've shared with us. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared. Before we conclude, is there some contact information that you'd like to provide as we wrap this thing up?
Of course. I provide a lot of free information on my site at RembrandtWrites.com. There are many articles there about, content strategy, SEO copywriting, and of course, public relations. And my contact information is also there too. If anyone has questions, I'm more than happy to help them. So it's RembrandtWrites.com, and, I look forward to taking any questions people might have.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you again for being with us today. This has been outstanding. To you, my Copy Confidential friends, I want to wish you all the best in your copywriting and business endeavors. Thank you so much for listening in today, and please know that we at GKIC are here beside you and ready to help you with all kinds of resources, training, coaching, and even our event opportunities. We're always just a phone call away. The number 800-871-0147. So please dial us up with any business challenge you may be experiencing, and we'll make sure you get the solutions to help you grow and meet your goals. So thank you for your membership. Thanks for giving us the privilege to serve you. I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from all of us at GKIC.